Today's episode is so important because it's all about being vulnerable. If you are truly wanting to find a healthy, lasting relationship, you need to be willing to get vulnerable. And if that makes you uncomfortable, you got a problem. You have a problem. And I want you to listen to this episode with an open mind and open heart, okay? It's like so many things that we keep hearing. It's so much about being, play the game and be tough and be hard. And it's just really keeps people at an arm's length. And it really doesn't promote being vulnerable. And so I am such a big fan of vulnerability, and all the women I work with, when I'm talking to them and hearing about the people that they're connecting to in the DMs and in real life, it is very telling if someone is vulnerable or not. And that's a real big sign about a sign of their emotional maturity. Okay, because to be able to have a lasting, healthy relationship, you need to be able to share and connect emotionally. And if you have walls up and you're talking to someone that won't be vulnerable and won't share, you're never going to connect. So I really need you to take a step back and reflect on that. Are you showing up vulnerable? Because if they are not, you first have to ask, are you showing up vulnerable? Are you being vulnerable? Are you able to get underneath the surface? Okay? And if not, why? Why not? Why aren't you getting vulnerable? Are you scared that they're going to hurt you? But that's what's kind of crazy, because the more you get scared to be vulnerable, it leads you to never never connect emotionally to anybody, leaving you alone, right? So if you really want to find somebody, you need to be able to connect with them emotionally, which requires vulnerability. So yeah, it's basically, you have to make a decision. That's something okay, how are you going to put yourself out there? I say that a lot. Put yourself out there, but how? I'm not saying, put cute pictures on Instagram that your life is perfect. It's not about, this facade of everything's great and dandy. It's about being real, being you, being authentic. And when you're connecting on dates or chats, when you're connecting with people, it's about really talking about real things, and they get to see who you are. And yes, I know that could be scary. But I'd rather you be scared and they run away, so good. Leave space for you to connect with someone that is actually maybe your person. I always say that your person will never run away. Your person won't get scared. Well, actually, I'll take that back. Sometimes you can find your person, but if you haven't done that inner work to heal and to show up trusting and vulnerable, then yeah. So, it's really important for you to do that inner work, right? And so if you have a hard time being vulnerable, that is something where you need to make a decision and say, okay, wait a second. I have been through all these relationships or situationships or trying to date, and I'm not finding the result that I want. I'm not finding this lasting thing. And are you guarded, right? And are you showing up vulnerable? Because that's a decision. It's really a decision on let me just bare my soul. Let me just bare my soul. And so I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of vulnerability. And so more so too, I need you to acknowledge when you're talking to somebody and talking to a guy, for example, and he says, and he's sharing something real, and maybe he even chokes up about it and maybe even cries. How are you responding? Are you appreciating that vulnerability? Because that is gold. That is gold. That's a huge green light that he has done some real reflection, and he has done maybe perhaps inner work for himself and really has been able to be vulnerable. And it just shows a level of emotional maturity that is so needed for a very healthy relationship. Okay, so like if you're talking to someone, right, and you're asking questions and they are not sharing, they're not going deep, they're not being vulnerable, that is a sign alone. If you keep trying to dig and they just don't want to share, they're not getting vulnerable and they don't want to, that is a sign of they haven't done some inner work, or they are not emotionally mature, or, and it's like, do you really want that? Do you want to pursue someone that, it has all these walls up? And like, sometimes we have this mindset of like, oh my God, but it's just so hard. And it's not. It's hard when you keep settling for people like that aren't ready to emotionally connect. So yeah, I challenge you. I really want you to take a step back and look at who you're texting and who you're talking to. Okay. And are they showing up vulnerable? Because that's such an amazing quality to have, right? And if they're not, dig a little deeper and dig about yourself. Are you being vulnerable? I love vulnerability. I'm a big fan. And honestly, it's like, I just think there's like a recipe for a successful relationship, and being able to communicate, like, oh my gosh, someone that can communicate, speak their mind and speak their thoughts and their feelings. I'm like, that check, right? Check your little boxes. That is huge green light. And sometimes when you don't find that, and you just are finding people that are not sharing vulnerably and they're not, opening up about stuff, sometimes we lie to ourselves and we're like, oh, it's just like guys don't really like to share feelings. Guys don't like to talk about things. Guys, bullshit. There are so many good guys, amazing guys. And by the way, the guys that don't share is not to say they're bad guys, but they're just not, perhaps, right? They're not ready for that serious, lasting relationship. They're not there yet. And I don't want you to wait for them either, or try to fix it, or try to help them because you see potential. We're not doing that. So I just feel like start to think about who you're choosing and say, wait a second, why do I keep like choosing guys that are not emotionally available? Right? Are you emotionally available? Sometimes we keep attracting who we are. So it's you having to really see, are you able to be vulnerable? And, start changing that story that you're saying to yourself over and over. Guys no one's emotionally available. No one is vulnerable. No, it's just the people that you are around and who you're choosing. I challenge you. Like, you can seriously right now say bye-bye to the people that aren't really being vulnerable. I think that's just such a good trait to be. Or for yourself to look in the mirror and ask yourself, are you being vulnerable? Okay? Are you able to get underneath the surface? And ask those hard questions. I want you to find your happily ever after, but it starts with you. Okay. I hope this resonated with you. I hope you are getting so much value from these podcasts. I really put so much heart and passion into them. And if they are resonating with you, please leave a review. It would mean the world to me. Take a minute and do it. And I thank you for it. I hope you have an amazing day. I'll see you next time. And don't settle for anything less than crazy love, because it has to be crazy love or nothing.